Hello and welcome to an overview of email and MMS marketing. We are at chapter 10 in the Stukin textbook looking at blunders and successes. This is an interesting chapter because the title doesn't really describe what we're about to look at. I mean, they are kind of wins and losses related to email marketing and the details, the strategies that have already been discussed in the first 9 or so chapters of the textbook. So we're going to jump right in. This is a more text heavy set of lecture slides, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm going to do my best to try and liven it up here. So this chapter begins first off with the blunders side. The successes, they're not as funny, they're not sexy, they're pretty much just the wins that you would expect coming from good email marketing. However, the blunders, there's a lot more here to learn. And really, there's a lot of different types of email blunders that can happen. I personally, as an email marketer, have probably committed all of these at least once. I started doing email marketing when I was about 23. I remember sending out my first email to a list of business professionals here in Southeast Michigan, and everything seemed to go okay. But over the following 8 years or so, sending out millions and millions of emails, everybody is destined to have a blunder here or there. It just kind of comes with the territory. But there are takeaways that we can utilize and help us learn about the topic of email marketing. And that's really what these slides are here for today. Again, these are more text heavy slides. Most of the photos are stock photos, just because there's not a lot to illustrate. We could post the screen grabs of various emails that didn't work or did work, but a lot of times the successes or failures lie in more of the process and the strategy rather than a single piece of content. And so when I think about the idea of email marketing blunders, I don't think of an email itself. I think of everything that happens leading up to it or afterwards. And so that's where we start here. I don't know if blunderful is a word, by the way, in this second point, but just to kind of state the obvious, email blunders, while they happen to the best of us, they can have some pretty big repercussions. And let's start with some fairly, I would say, not as probably harmless ones. And that starts with the non-targeted email. And this is where the incorrect message is sent to the wrong audience. The message is sent to the wrong audience, essentially. And in this example that they share is like cold emails going to people that are already, it's either sending a cold email to people that are already familiar with the brand, or the reverse, sending an email that is meant to set to for somebody that's kind of ready to buy. It assumes that they already are familiar with the brand, but it could be going to an audience that's never actually received any communications from you before. This is best just talked about in the example, right? So here this says the email marketer fails to adequately target the content of an email campaign to the appropriate recipient. So in this example, we're talking about women's sleepwear. So it would be sending an email to both men and women about women's sleepwear specifically. Some men are offended that they were sent marketing messages for women's sleepwear. Perception of the business deteriorates, and there's an overall drop in sales. I honestly don't think this would actually lead to a drop in sales. However, it could lead to more unsubscribes. It could lead to some social media backlash, like some hilarity, like, hey, like I clearly stated, like you could see a tweet. I can already see this happening. A tweet or an X or whatever you want to call it, of somebody putting a screenshot of an email that they received saying, with the kind of the commentary being, hey, I clearly stated that I was a guy here in my, when I filled out my profile here on this website, and yet I'm still receiving emails from women's sleepwear. However, in the time we live in today, I mean, this could be looked at as clever marketing. Say it's like, if I got an email about women's sleepwear, who's to say I wouldn't forward it to my wife who might be interested? But then what is the message there? Like, there's a lot of different things that go on here. This example is probably not that bad. I don't think it would rarely, if ever, go to the lead to actual declines in sales. It could lead to more unsubscribes, 100%. But it also, there's other externalities, both positive and negative, that could come out of this. When I think about, though, what a real bad non-targeted blunder would be, it would be really geographical. So most people that would watch this video are probably college students. It would be the equivalent of sending an invitation to an in-person event to people that live, to students or prospective students that live on the other side of the world. It's like saying, hey, we're going to have an open house here for the college or for the university, and you're invited to come, and it's next week, and it's at 5:00, whatever. And the email's only sent to people that are prospective students in Asia or something, or in Europe. And suddenly there's no chance that they can go. It could damage their idea of the college or the university, and it could make them no longer want to apply. That could be a legitimate drop in money coming in. I mean, in revenue, because decline in student enrollment, student application, that's tuition money. So that is an example that I could see being a true blunder. I haven't made that blunder before. I've seen it in the past, and being in higher education, I can, it's more relevant to me right now, so that's top of mind. But to me, the idea of mistargeting based on geography is usually going to be a bigger problem than, say, I don't know, than gender. Because these days too, the idea of gender, women's clothing, men's clothing, like, I get it. A lot of places don't even ask for that anymore in lead generation forms. It's more about, what are you interested in? What are the products that you're interested in? And that is how they target now. It's not like, my wife probably receives emails that are going to have menswear on it. And I mean, I would just ignore it and I delete it, but she might find it interesting and send it to me or something. And it's kind of similar to like what Old Spice used to do. Old Spice would create these, I mean, that's body wash and deodorant for men. It's cologne for men. And yet they had a massive marketing and advertising campaign years ago in the mid 2010s, where they would target women, because they thought, and their research showed, that the most common purchasers of Old Spice was women. And they were not purchasing it for themselves. They were purchasing it for men, either a spouse or a teenage son or something. The research was showing that, hey, like, we can't be just marketing to men, because they're not the ones that are actually buying this. I, for one, find it pretty crazy. I've always bought my own deodorant, so I am not in that target audience. But it was interesting to see, and it became kind of a case study in marketing for years, because it was really successful. But the other funny thing about it was, yes, there was a greater recall of the brand in women. And the email marketing that accompanied this was largely targeted to women, but it was largely the men that were doing the viral sharing of this. They were the ones that were talking about it on social media, talking about it word of mouth, in person. So it had a twofold effect. On one side, the non-conventional targeting, not a wrong target. This is not a blunder, by the way. This is more of a success, if anything. Old Spice got kind of a twofer out of this, because like you saw a TV commercial, the women would have a greater recall of the ad, so it would be more likely that they would make a better buying decision. But it was the men that had a greater sense of recall to then share the commercial itself and to extend the reach of those. And so that, to me, is a prime example of a non-targeting, or actually a really advanced targeting, that ends up being a success that you might believe on the surface is a blunder. So let's talk about the next one. This is the internal message blunder. This is when an organization's internal message is sent to a lead list. This is a big problem. This is a massive issue I have seen happen, and it's not, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it probably is. Honestly, of all the blunders here, this is probably the worst one in terms of what could happen. Company secrets could be leaked back and forth. Things could be leaked. Something, communications internally, at least especially with like medium-sized companies, those are the ones that stand to lose the most. If it's a larger company at 10,000, 20,000 employees, chances are internal organizational communication are going to get leaked at some point. Somebody's going to screenshot it, post it on social. Like, if you're an internal marketing person, you need to assume that the messages that you're sending out to the thousands of employees are eventually going to become public knowledge. It's unfortunately just kind of the way that the world is these days. On the reverse side of that, if you have a company of like 8 or 10 people, it just doesn't have the same cash. It's, there's not as much to lose there unless it's like a company of 8 or 10 people that's doing 100 million or something. And at that point, why even, like, how does that problem even happen? You just send an email to 8 or 10 people and not a list. So, the number one thing here is, first of all, keep your internal communications and your external communications separate. I've only seen this where an email that had like a trail of other emails internally attached to it in a footer was sent. That's what I've run into. But really, you just need the better infrastructure, better personnel in place. This is an interesting one, an interesting story that they say, where leads receive an invitation for a company holiday party. Again, I don't know how much I don't think this really tells the full depth of the story and what could go wrong. Yes, people could unsubscribe, but at the same time, if it's a holiday party, is that really what, if people are getting an invitation to an event, I don't see how that in itself is leading to unsubscribes. I personally would say, if you want to see an issue here, you could see a company's brand equity could take a massive dive if the wrong communication is sent. If there's an email that is sent internally to the team, that's supposed to be sent to the team about, I don't know, budget cuts, letting personnel go, eliminating of departments, if that's going out, human resources, types of communications that are sensitive, if those are the things that are going out to leads, that's a problem. Or think about, on the other hand, if there's there's a company hack or something that's happened in a place I've been, right? You'll get a communication like, hey, okay, we've been hacked. Here's, what went wrong, what we're doing to fix it, what else you need to know. If something like that goes to an external list, that's a huge issue, right? Imagine if that's a publicly traded company that suddenly their shareholders are seeing emails like that. So, okay, that stock price is going to take a dive, a massive dive. And the idea of sensitive information being shared within a company and then turning around and being shared externally to people that are even leads, or maybe not even leads. They could just be, or they could be customers, even worse. That's the kind of thing that is going to lead to a lot worse than unsubscribes. At this point, I realize I'm just kind of tearing apart these examples, but whatever. Here's the unsubscribe blunder. This is what happens when you send out emails to people who have unsubscribed. The issue here is legal consequences more than anything. The topic that they talk about in the chapter here is GDPR, but really anything at this point worldwide. There are laws in place where, hey, you, the recipient of emails, need to be able to go and unsubscribe from an email list and never hear from this company again. And if not, there can be legal ramifications. I will say, I think this is the least likely problem to occur, because you as an email marketer shouldn't even have access to an unsubscribe list, let alone be able to email them. Anybody that has a solid email list, email marketing program, a good CRM, anything from MailChimp to something within Microsoft Dynamics or Constant Contact or Salesforce, that the unsubscribed list should not exist as a list that can be put into an email or put to an email as a recipient list. That If that is even an option, then to me, the email database and the CRM or the program, whatever you're using, that's a design flaw. That's a product flaw. And you shouldn't be using that program to begin with. But let's go ahead and entertain the thought that this happens. Hey, somebody who receives an email after being unsubscribed could threaten litigation. It is a very realistic problem, and it happens more and more today. 99.9% of the people that get an email after they unsubscribe are not going to think of anything of it. It becomes more of a problem when it becomes a repeated issue where somebody tries to unsubscribe a few times and then it's not happening. But again, this is, of all the blunders, this is the least likely to occur. And honestly, like it could have the worst ramifications because it could end in a lawsuit, but most of the time I don't want to call it harmless because it's not harmless, but I've seen this happen once before and nobody even batted an eye at it. Honestly, at that point too, the way that a lot of people unsubscribe these days is in Gmail, for example, you can click the unsubscribe button at the top of the email inboxes will even add that like second layer of unsubscribing where there's no way you're even going to get the email. You click on an unsubscribe link in Gmail where you click that unsubscribe button at the top. I mean, if it's coming back in the spam folder already. The other issue I will say is it could lead to more spam reporting, which could do more damage to a brand because then others who legitimately look at emails could see your emails going to spam. So that's an issue. This is the rough draft blunder, and this is probably the most common I've seen. I've seen this happen, and it's not that it's like a rough draft. It's not always a rough draft. This is more of just poor internal processes, because campaigns that are prematurely sent usually happens when not everybody has seen it. I would say it's uncommon to see grammatical issues or anything that's wrong from a spelling error problem. I will like sending an email that's incomplete almost never happens. Again, if that ends up happening, that's a major internal issue that the company needs to address. That is not on the single email marketer. The problem to me comes up when you are in a situation where like somebody hasn't seen it and they are really the thought leader or like the team leader on whatever the topic is, and there's something really incorrect in there, like factually incorrect. This example is, again, very uncommon. A marketer creates rough drafts and they scheduled them even though they're incomplete. Why would you do that? So recipients receive a newsletter containing an ad for a Sri Lankan getaway, but no content. I just don't see that happening. The business has a significant drop in revenue. They don't even talk about why. So here's the takeaway here with the rough draft. The rough draft blunder, I mean, it's the most common, but not for the reason that you see here. Blank emails, I mean, people do not schedule emails when they are not complete. I mean, if you're watching this and you have not worked in email marketing, let me be the first to tell you, this does not happen. Again, if it happens, there is something seriously wrong with the way that the company functions internally. As a former marketing director, I can tell you right now, I would never let somebody send an email or schedule an email. Like, what was going to happen? Was somebody going to go back in and pull the email back? Remember, when emails are scheduled to send, like, it requires you to press send. You can't just press schedule and be like, oh, okay, I'll be back at it. That's a huge, huge problem. I just don't. I can't. This is, now that I'm reading the example, I'm just really flabbergasted at like how this was illustrated. The problem, the most common issue with the rough draft blunder is just that somebody didn't see it. Somebody who has the best knowledge of the content of the email did not have a chance to see it. For example, Maybe there is something about a Sri Lankan getaway, but maybe the date's wrong. Maybe there's details that are missing. Maybe there is, maybe it isn't even Sri Lanka. Maybe it's supposed to be somewhere else. The issue is that there's a major element of the email that is factually incorrect that subsequently leads to problems because people then see it, they like it, and they try to, get whatever it is that's made available. You see an email about a Sri Lankan getaway, you click through and you try to take advantage of it. I want to book this travel. Oh, it's not actually Sri Lanka. It's, I don't know, somewhere else. It's Alaska. That's a very different thing. That to me is where, again, revenue is not lost, but the potential new revenue is lost. That's where you're like, hey, I got 10 people that clicked through this email. They were about to, we could have gotten $100,000 here in revenue, but because the email was factually incorrect and these people were kind of spoofed here, we did not get all that. We did not get that $100,000 in revenue. So that to me is the more clear problem. But in summary, strategies to avoid blunders, right? Frequently check third-party tools and integrations. Hyper target, I don't think that's really a strategy to avoid. You just need to do better targeting. You need to make sure that your audience is correct. I do like the last point: double check, triple check, quadruple check. Make sure that all of the powers that be see these communications, because once they go, they don't come back. When you put out a social media post and you realize there's an issue 2 minutes later, you can delete it. If you do that to an email, there's no coming back. There's no recalling emails. You can request to recall an email, but the damage has already been done at that point. So what do you do if that happens? Hey, you just gotta be honest, own up to it, and figure out what you're going to do to reconcile the situation. The apology email, that's really, I think that is saved for the really big blunders. That's just saved for the internal communication blunder. That could be saved for the Sri Lankan getaway blunder, the rough draft issue, if it has proven to cause damage. There's also a chance. I mean, I've made blunders. I made a blunder in an email one time. It was a messaging issue. It was an inconsistent message. What was in the email was not what was on the website. It was incorrect. The event date was like wrong or something. The price was incorrect. It was a free event, and I put it in there as like $50. Nobody clicked through. The email fell so flat that nobody even batted an eye. And so we sent it, the updated email, the corrected email the next day, and it ended up doing really well. So these can turn into opportunities. There are certainly opportunities for wins to come out of this. But hey, I mean, you just got to be honest. You got to be honest with yourself and figure out the best plan of action quickly. There's only a couple of successes, easy couple. I think there's 4 slides here. Really, if you're trying to optimize your success, you just need to be in the loop with the analytics, knowing the open rates, the click rates, and also understanding when to send your emails, because sending emails at different times of day can lead to vastly different results. And that's where you get to this here, is you do want a consistent schedule, but depending on what it is that you're communicating, you may be better served sending an email out at non-traditional times. For example, if this is a newsletter with like current events, timely and relevant stuff, you're better off sending a newsletter early in the morning or late at night. If you send it in the middle of the day, nobody's going to stop what they're doing to read your newsletter. And even if they did, you're going to get maybe 5 minutes of their attention. The other thing to think about is, what are people doing when you send these emails? I'll be real honest. The 2 most common times I've heard from the surveys that I've conducted, people look at emails is when they're driving and when they're in the bathroom. Those are probably the 2 worst times for you to be doing that, but it happens. And if your target are executives or people that are managers or directors, honestly, that a lot of times you're checking emails when they're in meetings. If you have that knowledge, you want to make sure that, hey, if it's going to be in the middle of the day, I'm probably not going to get anything more than an open. If I get a click, maybe I'll get a look at a landing page. Am I going to get a form submission? No. Am I going to get a purchase? Definitely not. Am I going to get something else? Are people going to read this blog that I promoted for 10 minutes? No. it's important to understand the situation that your audience is in at different parts of the day. And then finally, the last piece here, and I don't know if this is a good way to like sum this up, but being transparent is good, and being honest with all of this is good. But the big takeaway here is just making sure that you don't mislead customers. Okay, I would flip that on its head and say, make sure that there's a consistent message from start to finish. If people are signing up for your email list, they did so for a reason. They're going to somehow be able to get value. They perceived value in signing up. Deliver that value. Deliver the value in the email. Make sure that it is delivering a consistent message with the website. And whatever the goal of your email is, whether it be a purchase, filling out a form, downloading something, just reading a blog post, watching a video maybe, make sure that it's clear and that you are communicating the value, because at that point, you're going to be able to do a lot more good than if you try to mislead them and do something shady. The idea of email marketing is to keep people engaged with the brand. And you're going to lose that by committing the blunders that we talked about earlier, even the stupid ones that were kind of exemplified here. You want to be sure that you are providing value through your communications. And by doing that, you'll be able to build up greater brand equity. You'll be able to improve brand awareness. And email marketing will be able to do its job, which is the whole goal with all of this. So that's all that I have for today. Did not mean to tear apart these slides, but if you have any examples, I would love to see them or hear them from you. So be sure to reach out. Thanks.